Okay, this is Operation Typhoon from Decision Games. It's not part of any particular series. It's quite an old game. I think it was actually originally out in 1978, but this is a deluxe edition that's been published by Decision Games, as I said. If we look at the components, the maps are beautiful. It's not a huge game in some senses. It is in terms of its footprint. So you're talking nearly 9 foot by nearly 4 foot here on this table. It doesn't cover all of Operation Typhoon, which has been controversial at times. It concentrates on a 2-week period. From the middle of November to the end of November, where it was still conceivable that the Germans could actually capture Moscow. Now, I believe this is quite difficult for the Germans, mainly because they've not really at this stage of the war got the ability to mobilise their entire army effectively. So there's quite a lot of units on the board here for the Germans, which are effectively what they call out of command, out of supply, out of support, I think it is the term they use. So they can only do, like mechanised can only move at half, you can only attack at half strength and defend at half strength, things like that. So the ones where we've got the red cubes are marking the German units that can be fully supplied. These are actually Corps HQ. There are 4 armies here, which are 2nd Panzer Army, 3rd Panzer Army, 4th Panzer Army and the 4th Army. As you can see, this covers quite a huge area around Moscow. It's the scale that's very big, and one thing it does with this scale, I think it's a bit more realistic in terms of the Eastern Front, that every single part of the front wasn't occupied in force. There's huge areas where there are gaps, quite considerable gaps in some places. If you go right down south there's a big gap in the German lines there. The Russians, different size units. The Russians tend to be divisions, whereas the Germans tend to be regiments, which are roughly equivalent. If you know about the Eastern Front, a Russian formation is always like one step smaller in organisational sense than a German one. The Soviets haven't got they defend. It's a sort of thing where they're defending everywhere. I think it was Napoleon that said, if you defend everywhere, you defend nowhere. So that's probably going to be a bit of an issue. But they really have to do that because of the effectiveness of the German mechanised formations. Now, Soviets do have some reserves. They've got Vaslov's army here in Moscow and the First Shock Army over there just to the rear and north of Moscow. Other things we look at, as I said, the maps are really nice. The counters are excellent, the big counters. That explains why the map's so huge. Very, very nice. Take a 2mm clip brilliantly. Got a couple of play aids, these big play aids, they look fine. Not so happy about the terrain effects chart because, but there's so few different types of terrain here. There's not really a big issue. I would like to have seen this as a separate sort of sheet with pictures of the terrain here rather than on the key, which is way over there in the distance, is the key to the terrain. But as I say, there's hardly any terrain types, so you'll soon get used to that. The manual itself, this covers the rules and all the scenarios, and this is why I say this isn't a monster game. And it's not because its rule set is 20 pages long, including the optional rules. And that is, for an Eastern Front game, that is very, very small rule overhead. I think what else could we mention? I think we've pretty much covered everything in terms of components. The scenarios, there are a few little errata, but they're very, very small. I think there's about 3 counters that are errata, and there's a couple of sort of errata actually within the scenario setups, but I mean a couple. I think there's 4 in total. As I say, this game is slightly controversial because of the time period it picks. It's also an old game, so the order of battle may not be up to standard for purists for this type of game. This particular scenario we're looking at. The fact the rules are fairly small, I think purists yet again will sort of say, well, how come all you like to keep things in supply, it's 6 hexes distance, regardless of what's going on in terms of terrain or weather and things like that. They'll go, oh no, you've got to factor all that stuff in. But what I have heard is this game is actually really good fun. So that's going to be the critical factor to me. I think it takes a fair amount of time to play, but only because there are a lot of units. But you say that there are a lot of units, but there's only 2 counter sheets of units for both sides, you know. So and there's plenty of other games where, you know, with half the size in terms of maps, where you got twice the units, 3 times the units. And God forbid you tried something like Fire in the East, you'd be sort of moving mega stacks around. So there you are. It's a bit hot here at the moment, amazingly enough, in Britain. So I don't know how quickly I'll get stuck into this. But I found a couple of videos. I can't remember the name of the guy, unfortunately, and can't look it up now. But there is one where he covers gameplay from this particular. I think he only covers like the southern scenario. There's really 4 scenarios you can play: south, central, north, or like I'm doing, the full campaign. Right, I think that covers it. Let's get rolling.